Okay, now. Hello, everyone. This is Bernadette, and here I'm with Kapil. And we're going to talk about why men and women are so angry at each other. And if I have to say something about it, it's because it feels really good. What do you think, Kapil?
Well, yes. Why did we choose this topic?
Well, you
Well, I
tell
think,
me.
well, I've over the last week, well, not just week, every now and then I run this closed Facebook group with men, and a lot of other places I go on Facebook. I get like these comments, I see these comments or posts where like people would say something, but underneath it is just like, I'm angry. Like I'm angry and resentful. And it's usually sugar coated with something nice, but underneath that you can feel sort of there's some anger and resentment. And I think I also see that with sort of women posting, um, and like usually covered with some kind of anger as well. So that's why I was like, it'll be good to just talk about it in open.
Just rip it.
Just, just let's go there.
So let me ask you first. You've mentioned about these posts and you talk a bit about women. But before we go to women, would you like to say more about men, about why men
Yeah,
are angry at women and how men express that anger?
easy question.
I can imagine,
I
Kapil.
yeah, I'll just say about myself.
Yeah.
I I have thought about it a lot, and usually the first layer of it is me. I'm a nice guy. I'm not angry. Like, what do you mean I'm angry at women? No, there's not at all. I love women. And then as I go deeper into sort of my conditioning, there's like reactivity that comes from different things. And I noticed that like a lot of my upbringing has been in an environment where men and women had certain roles.
Mm,
So any place I see things outside of those roles or context, I get reactive,
mhm.
and that's like on a broader scale. But I coach a lot of men, and it's so surprising that a couple of things that come up in very quickly. The first layer of when a group of men come together is that men subconsciously or unconsciously carry a huge amount of weight and
Mm,
responsibility uh, to like prove that they are worthy.
mm,
Does that make sense?
mhm.
It's like, and it's really surprising. Like we're all trying to do a good job. Like I think our culture and society has, we're continuously marketed about what a man should be like,
Mm,
right? It's like, oh, if you have six abs, you're a good man. If you show up in this particular way, you're a good man, or you're man enough, right?
mm,
And underneath all of that is a lot of men, and I want to talk about it from a point of view of male and female conditioning as we have in our
mm,
culture. So I know that there are varieties, but a typical male and female conditioning, it's like you have to be responsible, and
mhm,
you take on the weight of responsibility in a
mm.
certain way that you have to show up like that, in the world.
So, yeah. So, how does that relate? That conditioning relates to the anger towards women. Is it that they
Right.
make them responsible? Or?
I think part of it is that men carry the weight of desire quite a lot,
Mhm,
and then there is a lot of shame around it. So it's like
mm,
we have to carry the weight, but then we don't have access to it, right? Now we don't have access to it, so it's like we're confused. Like, how are we supposed to deal with this thing? Like, oh, on one hand, I'm carrying all the weight. of desire, and then it's like that continuously sort of position of
Yeah.
taking, because we're taught that that's how we are, we have to show up. It's like achieve.
Yeah.
And a lot of women are in the position of like withholding, because that's
Hmm.
where they're told that's their power, and the dynamics are shifting in some ways. But I think that's what causes a lot of anger and frustration.
Would you be able to give an example, for example, with you, something that happened to you that relates to that specific level of conditioning?
Well, yeah, I mean, sex is a big thing, right? It's like
Hmm.
I have to do all the work uh, to talk about desire, to talk about sex, and
Hmm.
then like I have to do the chasing, um, and 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 it's like a lot of the time it comes like, why do I have to do everything? You know,
Hmm.
it's like there's a place where we talk about masculine has to show up, but when you're doing it on your own, it has to be like a reciprocative thing. And when you're just doing on your own, it's like over a period of time, it just becomes angry and frustrating. Um,
Hmm.
and that's where I think a lot of it comes out. The other piece that I find with a lot of men is that um, there is a like a underlying seed that men don't feel that they are good.
Hmm.
Every time I speak to people, especially men, it's like, "Are you a good man?" It's like, "I'm a good man, but I'm a good man, but,"
They cannot just
right?
say, "I'm just a good man."
They
No.
cannot, like, it's I rarely meet men who just believe that they are good. Like there's and that comes from a sense of some kind of responsibility. It's like, oh, I'm a good man, but in this place I could have done something better. So like we beat ourselves so much
Yeah.
that we're not sort of doing enough, or we're not good enough. And that's the weight we all carry. And then on top of that, I think just with men, we get into this sense of uh, 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 competition.
Hmm.
You know, like women connect with each other really well, really, it comes naturally. With men, it doesn't. So we're not very good at asking for
Mm.
help, or connecting with each other about those kind of things, or sharing the weight of it.
Mm.
So it's like we're just in like this isolated bubble, carrying all this weight, feeling that we're not good enough, or somehow we have to be more than who we are to prove our worth. And then on top of that, like as soon as we connect with women, there's like, oh, we have to now show up.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck that. So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
there's already an underlying expectation from culture and society of how we're supposed to be. And then we interact with men, and there's like, oh, yet another place we have to show up in a certain way. And I think that's where a lot of the anger and frustration comes.
Yeah. Before, I want to ask you something related to that, but when you mentioned this thing about worth, that they cannot say, "I'm just a good man," is the same way that most women cannot say, "I'm beautiful."
Right.
And it's the sense it in one way for men is worth being like, as an useful as a thing worth as a person who gives something, and for women is a worth as a person who receives, who can
Mm,
be witnessed, and I think that also creates anger, and specifically in the elements that you talk about, having all these a variety of frustrations and lose scenarios, because there is no way to win if you're going to follow these rules who contradict each other. You're going to lose.
mm.
So how do men express this anger towards women?
Withholding.
Withholding. Like
Yeah.
what? I know the answer because I've been on the other side, and I want to hear it from you.
Yeah. I think isolation, disconnection.
Mm,
For me, I'm noticing the places where It's like, oh, you have to be a certain way, right?
Mm,
I'm gonna find my sense of freedom.
mm,
If restricted in some ways, I'm gonna just go in my own bubble and think that
uh-huh.
I'm free to do whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
And I think, which is really interesting, porn and
Mm,
men watching porn. It, the more people I talk to, when people watch porn, they get a sense of freedom in there because they
yeah.
are in the fantasy world where they can imagine anything, they can be anyone, and there is
Yeah.
no restriction of culture, society, your partner, or anyone around you. I can be whoever I want to be in with any kind of darkness in there, and
Yeah.
there's no restriction. There's like a
Yeah. Yeah.
sense of the
Power.
illusion of freedom that I get from
Uh-huh. And it's what rules, I
that.
can't remember, it's 32 of the internet, where if you think about it, there is porn about it. So is that.
Right. So I think it's it's like the illusion of freedom that I create
Mm,
from being in that kind of bubble is
yeah.
how I usually deal with that. Or when it comes to a point where like, and this is the place, we talk about like women want to feel you,
Uh-huh.
and for a lot of men, it's like we've shut down our feelings because
Mm,
we're told if you show your feelings, it's weak, you know, all those kind of things. And then, like for connection, you want to be able to sort of feel each other. And then, like you get backed up, and then it just comes across as like aggressive behavior
yeah.
because it comes out sideways if it's not integrated, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I love that expression. It comes sideways. Like it's not the person who actually caused the thing, but it's who's gonna pay for it, you know?
right. Well, it's an interesting thing. I think we talk about that if you don't digest your experience that happens with one person,
Hmm.
like all the other people in your life end up paying the cost of it.
End up paying the consequence. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And that's also true for men and women. And taking on your element, because it's funny, I asked that question about how men express their anger is because there is a strong belief that men immediately are going to express anger as violence, physical violence.
Mm,
And in this case, what you talk more was about a level of emotional violence, because that's what withholding is like push you away.
yeah.
That is in a many ways, accepted. It's more accepted than say I slap you in the face.
Hmm.
That's the level of acceptance, and this is also the level of violence that a lot of women use, especially withholding sex, withholding affection, withholding touch, to express their anger. The stereotypical throwing pants. But since we're talking that point, I want to say, when you talk to me about this topic, I was having a thought and realizing, that I don't think I get that angry anymore. But there were times when I used to get very, very angry, and physical violence was totally an option.
Mm,
And I remember once I was so angry at this guy, and he was sleeping on the floor, and I just went out and I didn't kick him really bad. I just kicked him enough to wake him up. And he was like, "What's happening?" And I remember having that thought, I want him to kick me or to punch me so I can totally now can kick him. Because I'm doing this like, and I'm just waiting and having this thought and being completely in agreement with that. Like, I want to provoke him
yeah.
because then I have a reason to actually be physically violent. Even if he beats me up, this was like the insanity of that thought. That guy, fortunately, was like, you need to stop. And, we eventually talk about it. But there is a level that, came up for me. And incidentally, I had a dream yesterday, like yesterday to today, where there was a man telling me, "Oh, you can't do that," and I made sure that not only I did that, but I hurt people on the way physically. And,
Mm.
in my own dream, I was thinking, "This is not a great way to do that. I should find a way to express this level of physical anger." Because I think part of what happens is that we don't really have venues to express that physical anger, or that anger physically, more than what I just said. And that goes for men and women. Like,
I
we're
like that.
taught that we feel this anger. When you feel it and when you express it, it's so delicious, because it's really, you can't, there is not a cell of your body that is not infused with electricity.
Yeah.
And if you're going for it, even just screaming or beating something, is such a tremendous explosion of pleasure. And that doesn't mean that you need to beat somebody else or anything, but there are very few venues for that.
Yeah, I love that. I do want to talk about that. But before that, what is your view on why women are angry at men?
Well, I think a lot of putting that example of the guy on the floor, it was an example of withholding, and and I wanted a reaction. I wanted to feel that person. I did not know that. I couldn't even express that. But at least him being angry had a sense of feeling him, of
Mm.
that. Oh, I matter enough for you to get angry. And I said it again. It's fucked up, but there is at the end of the day, anger is a very vulnerable thing, and for women, it's extremely vulnerable to say that you're angry, because it's okay to be sad and emotional, but anger, it's an emotion that these twisted rules have it that men are a lot more allowed to express anger, even if it's in a physical way, like punching the wall or something. But for women, it's tricky, and usually it's a desire to connect more, what drives me nuts and what makes me angry, and the inability to express the desire, the inability to be received. So it's a very vulnerable thing, because at the end of the day, it's just about caring, about wanting, about desire, about expressing something, and feeling blocked on those ways. And
Sorry,
regarding, yeah, and
so
there
are
was an
you go on,
I
go on,
went,
finish your stuff.
okay. And the other thing is, that's on a container of a relationship, I would say. And when you're just meeting a man, at least my experience, and I speak for myself and other people that I've noticed, anger arises when there is not enough attention. And
Mm.
and whether it's at the end of the day, it goes back to, I want to connect with you, and I'm open and I'm trying to do that, and then I witness this lack of attention, this inability to really connect, and that inevitably makes me angry.
Mm. Interesting. I like that. So it's almost like you want to be able to feel men,
Mm.
and when there's absence of that, it kind of like drives the feminine crazy, women
Yeah, well, at
crazy.
least it drives me crazy.
Right, right.
I'm one
I
of the
mean,
person that, if you want to drive me crazy, withhold your
ignore
feelings.
you.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like, and especially when I can feel that you want to connect, but you're like, no, I'm in my space, and I was like,
Mm,
in 2 seconds, I'll be like, fuck that shit.
mm, mm. I wonder what's so that's I like that, and I think do you feel there is another layer of like at a level of female conditioning in our culture that has it be that there's another layer of sort of anger and frustration towards
You got muted, Kapil, so I can't hear you. Oh, no. Yeah.
so do you feel that like a lot of the time
Uh-huh.
we just get the statements, right? Statements sometimes on Facebook or anywhere else. And there's just like a deeper sense of anger, not just from a place of not being able to feel a man in a real
Mm-hmm.
life scenario, but there's like just a deep seated anger or frustration that women have towards men. And I wonder if that's like what's the conditioning, or is there a conditioning element between man-women dynamic, or how women are told how to be, that shows up in that anger?
I guess, and this is the first thought I had. It's all about worth again. You mentioned how men are always struggling to feel worthy. Like women are also, they also struggle to be worthy, but in a slightly different way. It's more, the struggle is like, am I worthy of your attention? And and everything that gives you a hint that you're not worthy of that, or whatever you perceive as this is you're not being worthy, hurts. And it we go at the same level of, it's now know who actually caused the original hurt, is now who's gonna pay. And a person who doesn't pay enough, a man specifically who doesn't pay enough attention to me, may remind me of my father or an ex-boyfriend or something. And it's deeply ingrained that, you not being paid attention makes you worthless. And it's rageful, because it's at the core of your being. Like people not, and especially men, because a lot of the conditioning is that your worth is based on your desirability, with regards of men. Like if men desire you, if men consider you worthy of attention, of anything, then you're worth it. And
Mm,
not having that, and by this arbitrary standard of society, if you don't fit a very arbitrary set of things, of how you look, who you are, how you behave, it makes you automatically not worth of attention. And it hurts constantly. You go out to the streets and you're constantly bombarded with the idea that you're worthless. So eventually, that's gonna come out some way, because it's all this question, and this is a very controversial topic. So let's see how it goes. Like a lot of what women perceive as the patriarchy being do that, and it's like it's not men doing that. It's like everything around us. It's from the moment you step out of, you open your eyes, you're bombarded with the idea that you as a woman are worthless. And it will be insane to think that you're not going to get angry, and you're not going to find a focus and a target to see, oh, this is my opportunity. So the creepy guy who does this clumsy way, well, what a perfect target.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you
Oh,
for
I
that. I
can't, I
think.
can't hear you. I don't know what happened there.
Can you hear me now?
No, I can't.
I can.
Maybe mute and see.
How about now?
Okay. No, it might be that the microphone stopped working or something.
Okay. Hold on a second.
Maybe I keep talking, Kapil.
Yeah,
You
you
can't
keep
say
talking.
anything.
Keep talking.
Um, well, since we're talking about this, I'm going to talk about something that I had in my mind, and I thought it might be a bit too much for this this conversation. But this is something I'm not endorsing. I'm not saying this is what you should do. This is something I did, and it helped a lot. And by no means I'm saying people should do that, especially women shouldn't do that. But a long time ago, I was super angry with a guy. Like, you cannot imagine the level of anger. And we're going to have an important talk. And somehow, the day before the talk, I had the great idea to take some acid. And I took the acid, and I asked the acid, like, give it to me, like, give me what you got. I was very, very naive at that time. And 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 in order, and I couldn't really feel a lot because I was quite numb at that time. And I started saying, okay, I'm gonna go to his Facebook and watch all his pictures. And I started looking at all his pictures with other women of 10 years ago or whatever. And the amount of anger that came to me. I don't think I've screamed that much. I had to take a pillow and put it on my face. And I screamed and I cried for hours and hours. And the visions of the acid, I will only see him having sex with other women. And it was horrendous. And I screamed and cried for hours and hours and hours until I fell asleep. And the next day, my jaw was in pain because I had done this so much. And then when I had this conversation with the guy, I was so peaceful. I was just, it's not, that's why I said I don't suggest it, but it really worked. Like, I had such a massive release of anger, and it's not a recommended, not a therapeutic, not a coaching experience. It's just something I did, and I'm a wild creature, so don't do that at home.
Can you hear me now?
I can still hear you, Kapil, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Well,
maybe it's time to close it down with my magnificent Nazi story. So thank you, everybody, for listening to us. And if you want to contact Kapil, he has a private group. You can private message him and also do in the comments. The same for me. I don't have a private group. I actually prefer people to comment on my post and messaging me. So if you're interested about this topic, please contact us or comment on the, on the comments. Thank you. Goodbye.